Well, Erev Pesach would be a good time to learn Arvei Pesachim.
Okay, sponsors. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Konigsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Konigsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara, Nisan ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avrameir ben Shimon, Cheryl Sher, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon. A month of learning. Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bas Yehuda Leib. Starting today, Adina and Michael Kirshner, in memory of their parents, Florence and Nathan Kirshner, and friend Harriet Friedman. Tova and Leo Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya Bas Rav Beryl, and her father, Aram ben Yosef Mordechai. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister, Golda Leah Bas David Halevi. Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. A week of learning by the Belden family in honor of Rabbi Mordechai Eskovitz. And that actually is it for today. However, I will also include a day of learning sponsored by Joseph and Marilyn Stratfield in memory of his mother, Devorah Chaya Bas Chaim, and for Shabbos, Flo Weiss in memory of her uncle Joseph Wolf, her good friends, their friend in memory of Harriet Friedman.
Morning, Marilyn. How are you?
Shmuel and Henya Hadassah Novik in memory of their friend Harriet Friedman. Okay. May the Shamas have an Aliyah, Kranka Rafia, Velti Yashir Shema Tzliah, L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
All right. We are on Nun Hey Amud Aleph. We just finished basically after having said Rama Rav Papa, Kule, Tana, Kule, Kule, Katane. That basically, as we pointed out with Rashi yesterday, that Rav Papa is claiming that they were teaching the Kulas in regards to these issues as to what fast was similar to what, implying that we suggested there were three levels. Yom Kippur was on the top, Tisha B'Av was next, closer to Yom Kippur, okay, but superior to a fast declared by the community for a lack of rain, for drought. And then comes a Tanit Tzibur, which was the fast day for a Tanit Tzibur. And we said there was a difference also between the earlier ones and the later ones, okay? And we will, if I remember correctly, get to that in Gemara Tanis, where it talks about all of that, okay? So from the top of Nun Hey Amud Aleph, the top line, Uvechol makom talmid chacham v'chule, okay? Implying that, according to the Mishnah, a talmid chacham, regardless of place, should not be working on Tisha B'Av, okay? Lamemra comes to tell us, the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Savar, lo chayshinan leyohara. Is that to assume that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel does not assume that if a person follows the example of a Talmid Chacham, that it's not a sign of haughtiness. V'Rabbanan Savrei Chayshinan La Yohara, and are the rabbis ever thought to behave in a haughty manner? V'ha Ipcha Shma'inim Lahu, but shouldn't therefore the opposite be what we've learned? Ditnan, as taught elsewhere in a Mishnah. Okay? Chatan, a bridegroom, im yiratzeh likrot kriyat shema laila harishon, if they choose to recite kriyat shema on the first night of their marriage, the night where they're supposed to be involved in the mitzvah, okay? Koreh, he may read. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omar, he says, Lo kol harotzeh litol et Hashem yitol. Not everyone who wants to, let's say, take on the divine name, in other words, recite the Shema, okay, should do so, right? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan then says also, Muchlefet Hashita. You inverted the system. In other words, you got things mixed up. Okay? Now, Rav Shisha says, Berei de Rav Edi, Amar lo tepoch. Don't reverse what you said here. Namely, the Rabbanan ad the Rabbanan lo kasha. Namely, the statements of the rabbis, okay, versus the other statement of the rabbi where they said that they may recite Kriyat Shema, okay, does not have to be problematic. In other words, he's going to give a different explanation. Hacha kevan de kuli alma avdei melacha v'ihu lo avi, since in a location where the other people do have the custom of working, and therefore they're working, and he does not work, mechazik yohara, that's going to appear like an act of arrogance, of haughtiness. Aval hatam, in that case, namely what we saw before with the groom, kevan de kuli alma kare, since most people recite Kriyat Shema at night before going to bed, v'ihu nami kare, and he himself also, let's say, recites Kriyat Shema, then lo mechavze kiyohara, it does not appear as an act of arrogance or haughtiness. Now, further statement, the Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel ad the Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel lo kasha, and likewise, okay, we can assume that this is Rav Shisha, Berei de Rav Edi, saying regards to Rabbi Shimon's examples. We can also interpret it that there's no problem. Hatam, there in that case, hu deba'in in kavanah. Okay, he requires to have intention, motivation in his reciting of Kriyat Shema. And how can he do it if he's supposedly concerned about fulfilling the mitzvah, right? Of bia. Va'anan, sahade de lo matze kavanai da'ate. And we can bring testimony that he does not always have that intention on his mind. Mechaze ki yohara. Then the attempt to recite Kriyat Shema might seem like an act of haughtiness. Okay? Aval hacha, but in our case, okay, lo mechaze ki yohara, it doesn't appear like haughtiness. Why? Amrei melachahi delitle, because people will say, it doesn't look like he was able to get any work today. Pukchaze kama batlane ika beshuka. Look how many other people that are without work hanging around the marketplace. Okay? So what wouldn't be so unique that he did not work in that case, even in a place where their custom was to work on that occasion. Okay, in the morning of Yom Kippur. Okay, the morning of Pesach. I'm sorry. Okay, Our new Mishnah now continues to deal with the topic of minhag, makom. Matnitin, v'chachamim omrim, the sages say, Bihuda hayu osin melacha, ba'arve psachim ad chatzot. In the area of Yehuda, okay, remember that's the central portion of the country where Jerusalem is found, people would work up till midday. Ubegalil, lo osin kol ikar. But in the north section, in the Galilee, they would not work whatsoever, even the morning of Pesach. So Gemara says here, Chalila, which actually it should be Ha-Laila, okay, right? The night before, Beit Shammai Osrin, excuse me, Beit Shammai forgives, Ubeit Hillel Matirin, Ad Hanetzachama. Okay, if one worked at night, forbidden by Beit Shammai, but it was permitted until sunrise by Beit Hillel. Okay. Now, Gemara is going to have a question to start off with, okay, regarding this Mishnah. Me'ikara, originally, in other words, regarding this Resha of our Mishnah, Tana Minhaga, okay? Remember, we once said that the Mishnayot were not necessarily broken up the way we have them in our Gemara, but they were generally recited and printed, or at least learned, all together. So the Gemara is saying originally, when we learned these Mishnayot, and if you look, remember at the previous Mishnah, it said Makom Shanagu. So therefore it says originally, or earlier, okay, we're taught that this was based on custom. Levasov, Tana Isura. And now at the end, the Sefer of this Mishnah, it's taught as if it's a prohibition. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan lo kasha. It's not necessarily problematic. Ha, Rabbi Meir. In one case, it's the view of Rabbi Meir. Ha, Rabbi Yehuda. In another case, it's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Bi Yehuda, in other words, in the territory, the area of Yehuda, Hayu Osin Melacha, Ba'arvei Psachim Ad Chatzot, that they would do work on the eve of Pesach up to midday. Ubegalil Einan Osin Kol Ikar. And in the north, Galilee, they would not work whatsoever. Amar lo Rabbi Meir. And so Rabbi Meir challenges him and says, Ma Raya Yehuda v'Galil Lakan. What the source, what basis do you use the geographic areas as a determination for this purpose? Ela makom shenahagu la'asot melacha osin, but rather a place, a community, okay, where they had the custom to do work, they do. Makom shenahagu shelo la'asot, a community or place where they don't have the custom to do, ein osin, they don't do. Midika amar Rabbi Meir minhaga, from the fact that Rabbi Meir makes reference to custom, Michlal, the Rabbi Yehuda, Isura Ka'amar. We can determine the generalization, okay, that it was Rabbi Yehuda who was talking about the prohibition. So the Gemara comes up now and says, V'sava Rabbi Yehuda, Arba'a Asar Mutar Ba'asiyat Melacha. Are we saying then that Rabbi Yehuda feels that on the 14th, okay, it's permitted to do any kind of work? Vahatanya, okay? In other words, implying that with the exception of the Galil, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that it might be permissible to work. Vahatanya, But aren't we taught elsewhere in a different Braita? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Haminachesh b'shlosha asar, one who does weeding on the 13th of Nisan, v'ne'akra biado, and then he pulls up the weeds with his hand. Shotla b'makom hatit, he may then replant it or graft it, okay, in a place that is moist, that is muddy. Ve'ein shotla b'makom hagarid, okay, but he may not put it, okay, or replant it or draft it, so to speak, in a place that is dry. B'shlosha asar en, on the 13th, yes. Ba'arba asar lo, and on the 14th, no. Michti, since then, let's see. Shma'in le Rabbi Yehuda, that we learn that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar kol harkava she'ena koletet l'shlosha yamim, but here we see that Rabbi Yehuda says that any kind of grafting of plants that does not have the chance to flourish, to take effect, let's say, within 3 days, shuv eina koletet, therefore it no longer is, so to speak, acceptable. Ve'isal kadata, and if you're going to say, arba'a asar mutar ba'asiyat melacha, at the 14th of Nisan is permitted for work, lama li shlosha asar, then why did he bring the example of the 13th? Right? Vaha'ika arbesa, because the Gemara answers, well, maybe you might be able to say, well, you've got the 14th and the 15th, v'chamsa, umektzat shitzar, and part of the 16th, okay, before you have the Omer. Amar Rava, says Rava begalil, shanu. They taught that in regards to the north, in the Galilee. Vaha'ika lelia, okay, and do we really say, okay, that that's the case here, right? In other words, that's doable. Amar Rav Sheshet, says Rav Sheshet, okay, Kibeit Shammai. There, that's according to the view of Beit Shammai. Rav Ashi Amar le'olam kebeit Hillel. Okay, that it's always according to Beit Hillel. Lefi she'ein darkan shel b'nei adam lenachesh b'layla. Okay, because it's not, you can't say 14th, 15th, 16th. Okay, why? Because the question is, well, maybe, right? You might have argued, okay, is it possible to be done? Well, he could do the weeding at night, but it's not common for people to do the weeding at night. That's the point. Now, Ravina Amar, Le'olam B'Yehuda, okay, that we're talking clearly about the issue of the territory, the area of Yehuda, Uba Hashrasha. And here we're talking about actually planting. Chad miktzat hayom kikulo omrinan. And we say one part of the day is like the entire. Okay. Trei miktzat hayom kikulo lo amrinan. But 2 parts of the day, in other words, extending both morning and afternoon, okay, that we cannot say. We cannot therefore permit. That's why Beit Hillel would say one could only work through the night and not into the morning, okay, right? And that's why Beit Shammai says it's totally forbidden. But that's why we also could say that it's permitted to work the morning of the 14th, but not in the afternoon of the 14th. Okay, a new Mishnah. Matnitin, Rabbi Meir Omer, says Rabbi Meir, Melacha shehetchil ba kodem la'arba'asa, work that was done before the 14th of Nisan, Gomra ba'arba'a asar, one can finish it in the morning, I'm going to say, of the 14th. Aval lo yatchil ba betchila ba'arba'a asar.
You shouldn't start
One
it.
must not initiate new work on the morning of the 14th. Af al pi sheyachol gomra, even though it's possible to complete it. That's the view, we said, of Rabbi Meir. V'chachamim omrim, according to the sages, shlosha umaniot osin melacha ba'arvei psachim ad chatzot. There are three, I don't want to use the word artisans, but I would say three kinds of professions in this case that may work the morning, okay, or even the eve of Pesach, okay, but they can do so only still up to midday. Ve'eluhein, and these are hachaitin, the tailors, hasapirim, the barbers, v'hakovsin, and the launderers. Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af haretza'anin, and he includes Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda, the shoemakers, in that Mishnah. Now the Gemara, Ibayilahu. So they asked in the academy the following question: Letzorech hamoed tnan? Okay, is that only for the purpose of the need for the holiday? Is that what it's taught? Aval shelo letzorech hamoed, but if it's not for the purpose of the holiday, afilu migmar nami, okay, then is it possible to allow them to finish work there? Lo, no. O dilma, or perhaps shelo letzorech hamoed tanan, or maybe it was taught also when those items are not done for the purpose of the holiday. Aval letzorech itchulei matchilein, in other words, or maybe if they could start work on those occasions, o dilma, or perhaps bein letzorech hamoed, regardless of whether it's for the purpose of the holiday, bein shelo letzorech hamoed, okay, or whether or not for the purpose of the holiday, migmar in itchulei lo, that they could finish their work, but begin new work is not. Okay? So the question is, when you say they can work, is it only like finishing work like others, like Rabbi Meir's view, or is it they could start work? Tashma, listen to the following braita, says the Gemara. Aval lo yatchil b'tchila ba'arba'a asar. It says that one should not begin on the 14th. Afilu tziltzul katan, even to make a small belt. Afilu shivka ktana, even for the making of a hairnet. Mai afilu. What do we mean then when we say even? Lav afilu hani letzorech hamoed migmar. Is it not that we're saying that even for the purpose of the holiday, these can be finished? And yes, itchulei lo, but to begin them, no. Okay, miklal, the shelo letzorech. This seems to imply that when it's not for the purpose of the holiday, migmar nami lo gamrinan, that for the finishing it, here also we say that it's not permitted to finish it. Lo, no, says the Gemara. Le'olam d'shelo letzorach, migmar nami gamrinan. No, he says, basically, even when it's not for the purpose of the holiday, it's permissible to say that one is able to finish certain work on the eve of Pesach. Umay afilu, and therefore, why did the Braita say even then? Afilu hani nami de zutre minhu. Even these, where we say that they are basically small items. The salka da'atach, amina, because you might have thought I could think and say the following: Hatchalatan zohi gemar melachtan. That since they're such small items, one could begin them and really finish them in this almost the same act. In other words, at the same time, I'm understanding it. Natchil baho, nami lechatchila. That therefore to begin them, work on these things, one could also start. Kamash malan comes to teach us that that's not the case. Now, a new Braita. Tashma says this Braita, come and listen. Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol malacha shehi letzorach hamoed, any kind of work that is for the purpose of the holiday, as we roll over, Gomra ba'arba'a asar, is to be finished on the morning of the 14th. Ematai, at what point? Right? Says, Bizman shehitchil ba kodem arba'a asar, at the time when one began it before the 14th. Aval lo hitchil ba kodem arba'a asar, but if one didn't finish it before the 14th, lo yatchil ba ba'arba'a asar, one should not begin it on the 14th. Afilu tziltzul katan, even a small belt. Afilu shivka ktana, even a small hairnet. Letzorech hamoed, and for the purpose of the holiday, yes. Shelo letzorech hamoed, lo. But if it's not for the purpose of the holiday, no. The Gemara tells us, Hu hadin da afilu shelo letzorech nami gamrina. And here, this seems to be the rule, okay, that even when it's not, it seems logical that that's the situation, that even when it's not for the purpose of the holiday, also it can be finished. V'hakamash malan. But here it comes to teach us, the afilu letzorech hamoed migmar in itchulei lo, that it just comes to tell us that even for the purpose of the holiday, to finish it, yes, but to start it, no. Tashma, listen to another Braita. Rabbi Meir Omer, says Rabbi Meir, Kol malacha shehi letzorech hamoed, any work that's done for the purpose of the holiday. Gomra ba'arba'a asar, one finishes it on the 14th. V'she'ena letzorech hamoed asur, and if it's not for the purpose of the holiday, it's forbidden. V'osin malacha ba'arvei psachim ad chatzot b'makom shenahagu, and one may do work on the eve of Pesach, in other words, the morning of the 14th until midday, in a place where that's the custom. Makom shenahagu, and the place where it was the custom, yes. Lo nahagu, if it's not the custom to work there, lo, that's not the case. Ushmamina, and we learn again from this, letzorech hamoed en, for the purpose of the holiday, yes. Shelo letzorech hamoed, lo, shmamina. And if it's not for the purpose of the holiday, no. And that's what we learn. Okay. A new section from the Mishnah. V'chachamim omrim shalosh umaniot. The sages said that there were 3 professions that could work, okay, even, okay, on that occasion. Tana, we learn a Braita, hachayitin, regarding the tailors. Shekain hedyat tofer kedarko b'cholo shel moed. Because even a common person can, let's say, stitch, sew normally on the intermediate days of the holiday. So we could basically do a kal v'chomer. If a common person can sow during Chol HaMoed, then Erev Pesach, when it doesn't have any kind of clear sanctity, even the artisans, the craftsmen, okay, the professional workers should be able to do some work as well. Okay? Hasaparim, the barbers, Vahakovsin, and the launderers, right? What about them? Shekain haba mimidanat hayam. Why? Because they may have individuals come to them who come from afar, from across the sea. Vayotse mi beit ha'asurim, or someone who comes out of prison. Misaprim, they may get a haircut. Umechabsin, and have their garments laundered. B'cholo shel moed, during the intermediate days. So again, our kal v'chomer works. If there are people that can have their items done during the intermediate days, which has a level of sanctity, how much more so kal v'chomer before the holiday starts, the eve of Pesach. Now, again, Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he said, Rabbi Yossi, af haratza'anin, even the shoemakers, shekain olei regalim metaknin mina'alehem becholo shel moed, that those people who come to make the pilgrimage, right, for Pesach, they may require their footwear to be repaired during the intermediate days. How much more so, he would argue, before the eve of the holiday. And so therefore the Gemara asks, B'mai kemiflage, what are they arguing about? Mar savar lemidin tchilat melacha misof melacha. One master holds that one can learn regarding the beginning of work from the end of work. Umar savar ein lemidin tchilat melacha misof melacha. And the other master holds that one cannot learn about beginning of work from the end of work. And that finishes that.
You'll have to finish it, doesn't mean you have to be able to start it, right?
Okay, our new Mishnah, okay, gives another example. Remember we said that part of the concern, okay, is what really would be considered appropriate work Erev Pesach, okay? Because they're concerned that people must be involved in at least the following. Number one, okay, baking matzah. Number two, be involved in getting their animal, the lamb, when the temple existed, ready and getting it cooked, so to speak, all right? If not, other things as well, okay? So the Mishnah says as follows, okay? What happens if one has, let's say, a hen house, okay? And, or a dovecote, okay? And one needs to adjust certain things for the animals, regarding the animals that live in these two places. In other words, you have to do some sort of adjustment to the dovecote, okay? Add to it, rebuild it, clean it, whatever. And what happens in the hen house regards to the animals, okay? The hens, the eggs, things like that. So our Mishnah says, Moshivin, okay, Shovchin Latarnagolim Biyud Dalet. Now there's a difference of opinion how to explain the phrase Shovchin here. According to some, it refers to the coops of the hen house or the dovecotes, okay? Others say no, it refers to eggs, okay? and that one may return or adjust the eggs for the hens on the 14th. Okay? In other words, pull up the hen, grab the egg, etc. Second of all, v'tarnagolet shebarcha, and if a hen that's supposed to be sitting on eggs, in other words, brooding, flees the hen house, machzirin ota lemekoma. On the 14th, it's permitted to go after the hen, bring it back, and put it on its whatever, coop. Ve'im meta. And if that hen were to have died, moshivin acheret tachteha. It's permitted then to put another hen in its place. Another kind of work. You have a barn, and there are animals in the barn. Okay? Gorfin, one is able to sweep the dung. Mitachet raglei behema biyud daled, from under the feet of the animals on the 14th. Ubemoed, and on Chol HaMoed, misalkim letzadin. Then you are even able to remove it to the sides of the barn. Another piece. Molichin kelim umevein mibeit ha'oman. One can bring utensils, okay? And not only bring utensils, but get utensils back from the home of the artisan, the craftsman, afal pi she'enan letzorach hamoed, even though they are not needed for the purpose of the holiday. Gemara says as follows: Hashta, here in this case, otove motavinan. Okay, we say that it's permissible to sit the animal. In other words, to bring the animal, okay, and make it sit. Okay, ahaduri mibaye. Is it necessary to say to return the animal? Amar Abaye, says Abaye, Seifa, the end of our mission. Eta'an lecholo shama'ed. Here you've now reached the point to discuss issues pertaining to the intermediate days. Amar Rav Huna responds, Lo shanu ela toch shlosha lemarda. No, he says Rav Huna, we only learned this because we're talking about a period of 3 days within which the hen rebelled, so to speak, that fled the hen house, the brooding coop. The akate lo parach simra mina. Why? Because the heat, so to speak, the animal being in heat, in order to be able to warm the eggs, right, haven't left the animal. Va'achar shlosha, the yeshiva, and after 3 days of sitting, de pastala ba'e gamre, and after 3 days, it has exited, it has finished. Okay, is it necessary to finish? Aval lachash loshim lemarada, but if the animal ran away after 3 days, it happens. The parachla tzimramina, that this heat, this ability to therefore warm the eggs, okay, has left it completely. V'toch shlosha liyeshivata da'akate lo paside bai legamre. And during the 3 days, when it's supposed to be sitting brooding on the eggs, it still hasn't lost and hasn't finished what it's supposed to be doing. Lo mahadrinam, then we can't not return it. Is that the issue? Rabbi Ami Amar, says Rabbi Ami, Afilu toch shlosha yeshivata mahadrina. Even within the 3 days, we can return it. B'mai kimiflage, what then are they arguing about? Mar savar lahefsed meruba chasheshu. One master felt that for a large loss, the rabbis were concerned. Lahefsed mu'at. But for a small loss, a couple of eggs, they weren't concerned. Umar savar lahefsed mu'at. Nami chashashu. And the other felt that even for a small loss, the rabbis were concerned. Okay. Continuing now, back to our Mishnah. Gorfin mitach. It said that they could sweep from underneath the animals. Tanu Rabbanan, says a Braita. Hazevel shebechatzer. If there's dung in the courtyard, misalkino tolet stadin. One can move it aside, move it to the sides. Okay? Why? Sheberefet b'shebechatzer motzeino tan la'ashpa. If it's in the barn or if it's in the courtyard, we can actually take it out to the garbage pile. Hagufa kasha. That statement itself, says the Gemara, is problematic. Amart, on the one hand, I'm saying you say, Zevel shebechatzer, misalkino tolet stadin, that any dung that's in the courtyard, one can remove it to the sides. Vahadar tani, and then afterwards you come to teach, sheberefet uveshebechatzer, motzeino tola ashpa, that if it's in the barn or in the courtyard, one can take it out to the garbage pile. Amar Abaye lo kasha. Khan, says Abaye, there's no problem. Why? Because here, B'Yodalid, we're talking about what's can be done on the 14th. Khan b'chol Moed. And here, in another situation, the other Braita, we're talking about what's permitted to be done on Chol HaMoed. In other words, on the 14th, you could take it out to the garbage. On the Chol HaMoed, it could only be
pushed to the side.
Okay. Rava Amar. Rava's going to disagree. Havaha b'chol shel moed. Both of them really deal with the example of Chol HaMoed. V'hachi ka'amar. And this is what it means to tell us. Im na'aseh chatzar kerefet. If the courtyard, okay, is in a condition that it's so messed up from the dung, like a barn is, motzein otola ashpa. Then we can take it out and put it to the garbage pile.
The extent of the mess.
Okay, now to the Sefer, the next part of the Mishnah. Talked about, remember, taking utensils. Okay, bringing utensils or taking them from the home of the craftsman, Erev Pesach, right? Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Badik lan Rava. Says Rava gave us a test, okay, with the following. Tnan, it was taught in the Mishnah, Molichin u'mevi'in kelim mibeit ha'oman, afal pi she'enan letzorach ha'moed. It seems to be teaching us that one can bring and return, I'm going to say, vessels from the home of the craftsman, even when it's not for the purpose of the holiday. Urminhu, and then he raised a contradiction by telling us as follows: Ein mevi'in kelim mibeit ha'oman, that one is not permitted to bring utensils to the house of the craftsman. V'im choshesh lehen shema yignavu, and if one is suspect that they might get stolen, mifanim lechatzer acheret, then one should, so to speak, remove them to another courtyard, to the neighboring courtyard. Umishaninan lo kasha, and we learn that this is not necessarily a problem. Kan ba'arba'asa, in one case we're talking about the 14th. Kan b'cholo shel moed, in another case we're talking about the intermediate days. V'ibayat ema, and if you want, I would ask the following. Hava ha b'cholo shel moed. What about both cases being on the intermediate days? V'lo kasha, and here we're saying maybe there's no problem. Kan b'ma'amino, in one case where we have trust in the craftsman.
Trustworthy, right?
Kan b'she'eno ma'amino, and in another case where we don't have trust in the craftsman.
He's not afraid. He's afraid that
V'hatanim, but isn't it taught elsewhere in a Braita? Mevi'in kelim mibeit ha'oman, that one can bring home, okay, take back, all right, utensils from the home of the craftsman. Kigon hakad mibeit hakadadar, like an earthenware vessel from the home of the, craftsman, craftsman.
Potter.
Right? Potter, thank you. V'hakos mibeit hazagav, and a glass cup from the home of the glass blower. Aval lo samar mibeit hatzava, but not wool from the home of the dyer. V'lo kelim mibeit ha'oman, and not other vessels from the home of the craftsman. V'im ein lo ma yochal, and if the craftsman, in other words, doesn't have anything to eat, in other words, he's relying on your paying him for that item to be able to buy food for the holiday. Noten lo scharo, okay, you could give him his payment on Chol HaMoed, okay, right? In that situation, right? What happens? Umanicho etzlo, and just leave the item with him. Ve'imeno mamino, and if you don't have trust in him, minichan bebeit hasamuchlo, then you can put it in a neighboring house. Ve'im choshesh shema yignavu, okay, and if you suspect that there's the possibility of it being stolen, mikan mevi'in b'tzina betoch beito, okay, you can bring it then in a tzina manner, in a kind of surreptitious, right, manner from in the house. So the Gemara says, taratzt mevi'in. So fine, you gave a explanation in terms of bringing it. Okay, bringing it home, really. Molichim, but kasha, but bringing it to the artisan, that's still problematic. The Katani, why? Because it teaches ein mevi'in, we cannot bring it. The kol shekain, the ein melechim. Okay, if we can't bring it home, how much more so shouldn't we be bringing it to him? Excuse me. Ela mechavarta kedeshaninan meikara. But rather, it's got to be clear that it's the way we taught it originally. Okay. Now to finish up a little bit, we'll go this Mishnah just a little bit on the top of Nun Vav also. Okay, says the Mishnah, Shisha dvarim asu anshe Yericho. There were 6 things that the people of Jericho did. Okay. Again, remember this is still in the context of Minhag Hamakom, that they did in Jericho. Al Shlosha Michu Biyadam. 3 of them, the rabbis objected to, reprimanded them. Va'al Shlosha Lo Michu Biyadam. And 3, the rabbis did not reprimand them. The Eluhain Shelo Michu Biyadam. And these are the ones that they did not reprimand them. The first, Markivin Dikalim Kol Hayom, that they used to graft palm trees the entire day. Okay, we assume it's on the 14th.
14.
Right? Second item, V'korchin et hashma. Okay, right, that they would bundle the Shema. Okay, we'll see what that means in the Gemara. V'kotzrin v'godshin l'fnei ha'omer, and that they would harvest and they would bundle branches of leaves, okay, with produce on it before the Omer. Ve'elu shemichu biyadam, and what was it that the rabbis reprimanded them? Okay, first thing was, right, matirin gam ziot shel hekdesh, right, that here too, what they would do is they would take, again, kinds of branches that had been consecrated, right? V'ochlim mitachat hanisharim b'Shabbat. Okay? In other words, that if you had certain fruit that had fallen off branches, okay, that they would eat that fruit on Shabbos. V'notnim pe'ah l'yerek, all right, and that they would also give the issue of pe'ah, of the corners of the fields, regarding certain vegetables. Umichu bi'adam chachamim. And in these cases, the sages reprimanded them. Okay, so that that last item, okay, just a note, all right, to point out. Okay, let me just. Okay, where it says, eaten fallen fruit, okay, from the trees in the Sabbath, okay. Art Scrolls note, okay, that again, the Gemara will explain it, okay. In other words, they found dates that were lying under the palm trees that had fallen off, okay. And that was the issue, and that they were eating them on Shabbat. So the Gemara is going to pick up tomorrow, okay, and continue with a number of Braita that will clarify the Mishnah. So wish everybody a good Shabbos, right? And take care, everybody.
Shabbos. Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos, everyone.